Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Behind Massive Screens, a game development podcast here from Massive Entertainment in Malmö, Sweden. We have been, me and my dear co-host Dóri, I'm Petter, by the way, we've been on our summer vacation.
Indeed.
So at the same time, BMS took a bit of a summer vacation, but we're back at the office, in the studio, and ready to go for the fall.
Yeah, hope you missed us. We missed you.
We definitely did. I missed you, Dóri.
Oh.
Oh, well, that was like a I love you moment, and the other person
I feel like
goes,
I'm interrupting something here.
I
should not even be in this room right now.
It was too good to give up.
Yeah, I know. Did you have a good vacation?
Oh, yeah, indeed. And
you went to Iceland?
Yeah, took a little trip back to the old motherland, which was quite nice.
Yeah.
You know, hanging out with the family and stuff that I haven't seen in a while due to, well, the past 2-3 years.
Yeah, something happened.
Yeah. But yeah, and then being back in Sweden, having like a second summer, because it's just been so sunny the last couple of days. Of course, I say that on the day where it starts kind of raining again. But
yeah, sure. It's September something right now. And yeah, summer started on September 1st, essentially. It got really weird. Anyway, we're not here to talk about vacation, even if we probably could. We're here to talk to Daria, community developer here at Massive Entertainment. Welcome, Daria.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm going to leave it over to you because I heard you started talking.
I'm prepared. I'm going to fire off the first question, the question that we use to kind of kickstart the conversation. For those of you unaware, here on Behind Massive Screens, we pull aside our coworkers and talk about all things game development. And the very first question, Daria, is what is a comm dev or a community developer? And in as few words as possible, what is the job?
So we'll probably start with referencing a meme. One of my favorites. I mean, I'm comm dev. I am on socials, like chronically online, and this is a meme with the guy mopping the ocean, and I feel like this specific image is a perfect description of the job. Because whatever we are doing, it never ends. It doesn't really matter if it's like collecting feedback or strategizing. This is the essence of the job, like mopping the ocean. So if we want to talk about the serious stuff and explain to our listeners what comm devs actually do, I would say that the most important part of the job is that the comm devs are empowered to plan and execute the strategies that should be aligned with production and marketing objectives and help other disciplines bring forward whatever they are planning, whatever the brand strategy is, and also empower players to have the best player experience with a specific game.
Right. Yeah, and I guess the main difference there between, and we'll get deeper into this later, between a comm dev and a community manager is that you are actually sitting and a part of the development crew.
Yeah, community developers are integrated into a development or production team, depending on the location. And I think it's very Ubisoft specific because it is not a job title that exists in the majority of companies, right? I can only name a few besides Ubisoft, and even regarding them, I think they adopted it from Ubisoft at some point. Just either people were moving or because they saw the opportunity to do that. And actually, that's one of the best things that exist for this position, because that also helps us create this bridge between the production, development, and the players, and vice versa, because we're not only moving in one direction. It's important for us to bring community expertise to the table and also make sure that we communicate back all the changes or the plans that the team has for the game.
I think that's one word we're going to come back to later is community.
And the bridge.
And the bridge. Community and bridges. That's what we're going to build in a little while. But before we talk about those things and kind of go into your practical work, the other question we always ask is, how did you end up at Massive Entertainment?
So at first, I kind of had to move to Sweden at some point in my life. That was not for Massive. That was for another company. And I don't know how far back in time you guys want me to start, but this is not my first career. I'm coming from a completely different industry, and I've managed to build career in partners and public relations before, and also worked as a AT analyst. But at some point, I realized that I'm not getting enough. I'm a little bit bored. I reached my peak basically, and there is nothing else for me to do there. And at some point, I started thinking what else I can do with the experience and knowledge that I have in public relations, in analytics. And then I thought, wait a minute, there are actually people working for different brands, for different games. And I'm a gamer, I'm a fan. Why not try, and get into the gaming industry? And I can't say that community was my first choice because there are some other options. But then again, I realized that with what I love doing the most and the sort of experience I have, I will probably be, it will be a good opportunity for me to at least try and work with communities. And that's what I did. I ended up at a mobile gaming company. That's where I started my career, and I've been doing that for quite some time. Then I had a chance to move. I'm not saying that mobile gaming is bad or not interesting, but I personally love action and adventure games. I love shooters. I love multiplayer games. So at some point, I had the opportunity to move and work on a live project, right? I mean, mobile games are live games as well, but there is a difference.
Different breed.
Different breed, like production and pipeline wise, right? So one thing led to another. I moved to Sweden for another opportunity with another company. And then at some point I was approached by Massive. And that was a bit surreal because I've been the Division fan since day one. And I don't know, not even in my wildest dreams, I thought that it would be possible for me to work for Division one day, because when I was a community team lead back in the days, I always had Division as an example, for my team and for my colleagues, like look at them, how they're communicating with their players. This is what we should be striving to do because they're excellent at that.
I'm just going to smile at the camera because I was part of that team back then. I know.
So yeah, that's how I ended up here, sitting at this very table.
Yeah.
I mean, I wanna, before we go more into the job, this might sound maybe a little bit stalkery, but I went through a little bit of your Instagram. You actually do like cosplay and stuff as well.
I do. I mean, it's you're not really a stalker. It's fine, unless you're sliding into DMs or sending some dubious pictures. Everything is fine. No. Yes, I am a cosplayer. That's true, and at some point in my life, I even managed to do that professionally and work for like very well-known companies. But yeah, that's working an event is a big deal of itself. Working in a costume, never again. Never again. Especially on high heels. No,
that sounds pretty awful, actually. The high heels. I mean, the cosplay sounds great.
I mean, I don't know.
We could try.
Yeah.
So one thing, before we start going into everything, again, we're going to talk about this later, but we are going to teasers. I just want to talk about the word community, actually, because again, it's 50% of your job title, obviously, but it can be kind of just, I think we and most players kind of know instinctively what a community is. But how would you describe it? Or if someone looking at this have no idea what a gaming community is, how would you describe?
I would also probably start with the reference of an iceberg. That's also one of the popular memes that people love to use when you just see the tip of the iceberg above the water, but under the water there is a much bigger globe of ice. So talking about community and what community actually thinks our job is can be very different from their reality.
Right.
But of course, there are some things that are visible. I mean, we are public faces. We interact with people, be it like on camera or online on social media. But let me focus on the most positive part of this tip of the iceberg and things that I, as a comm dev, enjoy the most. And unfortunately, it's not collecting the feedback. We can talk about it. Yes, but I just want to focus on things that bring me joy in this specific position. So if we're talking about UGC, it's user-generated content, basically whatever you guys draw, cosplay, fan fiction, screenshots, memes, everything that community produces because they love the game, they want to connect with the game, they want to share the joy with others, and browsing through that content, looking at people's creations, making sure that we acknowledge all that and promote them on our socials and actually reach back and congratulate them and saying thank you for being such an awesome fan, because that brings a lot of joy to us as a team. And whenever we are sharing something with the team, like, 3D printed guns or like this Air Force model that one of the fans brought to the office, we actually have an article on our website about it if you want to check it out. Like this stuff provides so much inspiration and energy, and I can never get enough of this creativity. Like this is really awesome. What can be better though is interacting with the fans on gaming conferences, offline events. Unfortunately, that is something that COVID prevented us from doing as often as we used to as an industry. But back in the days, I think it brings so many positive emotions, talking to people, seeing their awesome cosplay in real life, listening to their feedback, to what they have to say about the game face to face. It's very different from reading comments online, right? Sure. It's a completely different, energy exchange whenever you're doing that live. Yeah,
sure. And doing events live and meeting. We're going to talk about the ETF, which is a big deal for the division. That was used to be in person, but as you say, COVID kind of, even if we're post-pandemic now, it still has had an effect on the industry as a whole, not just the division, but the entire industry.
Yeah, it's one of my biggest regrets at the comm dev on the division that I was not able to join the team early enough to be a part of this, live meeting.
Yeah. It was one of the first things I did for the division, actually, was trying to get book tickets for the first ETF. That was anxiety-inducing. Hey, get people from the US here, but we pulled it off somehow. But we'll get back to the ETF. I think one word was a big part. We're going to talk strategy. We're going to talk about a lot of stuff. Don't worry about it. I think that what interesting, you mentioned in your previous experience, analyst. And that is something that comes into play of being a community developer as well. How does that work?
Yeah, I would say that comes into play quite a lot, and maybe that is that part of the iceberg that is below the surface. Actually, if we're talking about day-to-day stuff, right? Aside from planning, aside from strategizing, tactics, whatnot, and interacting with players, we also, like, one of the main purposes for us is to collect feedback, analyze it, and present it to our stakeholders, be it developers, be it production team. Sometimes brand can, also ask us to, look into specific claims or try to understand what would be the best approach for us going forward. And actually, that's not the most exciting part of the job, obviously, because it involves a lot of Excel, a lot of DAX. We have specific community listening tools. So probably the thing that I need to explain about us working with the feedback and Because, a lot of people have this misconception that brands are not listening to the players, right? Because you as an individual may be leaving comments about a specific topic, and you may be feeling like your specific requests are not being seen and not being answered. And while that's not always true, the reason for a very specific and niche thing to be left out is because we are not working with individual feedback, unless it's ETF, of course, or specific tasks like PTSs, right? Because that's where we're looking for individual feedback. But whenever we're analyzing sentiment in general, we'll be looking at the most discussed issues, the most common complaints. So a very specific thing may not be a part of that bigger bubble of problems, of issues, or things that people talk about in the community. So no, we're not ignoring anyone, but we are also not playing favorites, right? For us, it's important to concentrate on the wider community, not only on the people who are active online or who you're interacting with on Discord or on the, YouTube video on Reddit. For us, it's a much, much, much bigger bubble.
Sure.
And it's not like we personally decide on the feedback that we're going to be delivering to the rest of the stakeholders, to the dev team. That is actually what we have the listening tools for, because they provide us with the data. And this data is quite reliable because we also help integrate the search strings and work with other stakeholders within Ubisoft to make sure that this specific software provides us with the exact data that we're looking for. So it's very tailored to our needs. And I thank them very much for helping us with that, because that alleviates a lot of stress from us. Stress, and what I mean by stress is that not being able to deliver what exactly community is occupied with at the moment. Right. Because, of course, I see a lot of chatter on socials. Of course, people tag me all the time, but I don't want to be biased. I don't want to be affected by this chatter. I want to have data that I can back up my theories and assumptions on.
Sure.
Yeah, and I think that's a very important point to make, that it's data informed. You see a tweet, it's in all caps, and this feels like very important, we should do something about this right away. But then it's like, well, okay, there's one person talking about that, but there's 500 people talking about something else, so maybe we should focus on that first.
Yeah, true. Because also about the feedback, like whenever we're done collecting, analyzing, and presenting feedback, while I myself is very much included within the team, and I usually have a place during almost all the important discussions, which is amazing, but I don't think that it's applicable to every community person, within the industry, because different companies operate differently, and I think it's still quite new job family, and not a lot of companies or brands realize how important it is to include a community specialist before, like in the pre-production phase or during the production, or even have them included in the conversation about the future of the product. For the Division 2, it's very different. I'm actually included, but then I don't know. Some person criticizing us online may say, "But what you collected the feedback? What happened to it? Like, why it's not being acted on?" And that's another thing that I probably need to talk a little bit to explain how this whole process works a bit better. Unfortunately for those who are expecting for their complaints to be, made a number one priority, our job ends at delivering that feedback and advising our stakeholders like what are the most important points to address at this specific moment, or maybe at some time in the future. We do not have that much power beyond that.
Right.
Because budgeting, production, it's much more complex thing that it may seem. And I probably would not go into a lot of details, right? But then again, it's not us who are making decisions about the future. Right. Even though we're making sure that community voice is heard and we're present during the specific meetings where this is being discussed. But apart from that, that's pretty much what we can do.
Yeah, you can bring the data, you can bring the explanations, but those, like the development decisions, are made elsewhere.
Yeah, and I don't.
I was just going to say, but that's so great having you at the studio as well, because you are very integrated and
yeah. I just wanted to mention that I don't want that to sound as I'm dissing on the development.
No.
Not at all. It's just other more important and more serious things are at play whenever those decisions are being made, because while we all realize that a specific issue or the specific bug is very important at the moment, maybe the team do not have the resources to fix that right now, right? Yeah. So it doesn't mean that this feedback is not applicable, that we're not listening. It's just, there are a big chunk of ice under the water.
Yeah. And of course, there also comes in that, especially with the live project, timelines are long, and there's something that they're focusing on that's coming up in several months that, they need resources for. So then there's a question of, do we need to fix that now? Can we fix that then? But I guess that's kind of where the bridge comes back in that we talked about earlier of, the communication is a two-way street. You bring the community sentiment to the developers, but then you need to bring the developer sentiment and communicate it back to the players.
Yeah, absolutely. And as much as I hate this breach thing, because I think it's such a cliche about this specific job, about like community management job, it's one of the most integral parts. And you're absolutely right. It's a two-way street, because it's not enough to voice community concerns to developers. You actually need to communicate the decisions back to make sure that people understand what the future looks like, what are we doing right now, what our plans are like for months to come, especially for a live game, right? And we operate on season by season basis. So of course it's important for us to make sure that community has full transparency on all our plans and what we're doing. Of course, that probably sounds a bit like I'm a hypocrite, right? But in reality, at least this is what we are trying to do as this team. And Petter, you would agree with me. Like, transparency has always been the key, right? Because we don't want to have any other kind of relationship with our community. We want them to have a say, to be included. That's why we have ATF. That's why we have so many tests. That's why we have Trello board, right? So talking about this communication and providing feedback to players. Yeah, one of the most complicated parts of this process is basically translating from dev to the regular person language,
right?
Because there are so many technicalities, so many like professional slang aspects of the job, like what different departments are doing behind the scenes, that sometimes does not translate very well into regular person speech and understanding. And yeah, that's where I can say that I'm so grateful for this team, because I myself not always understand what we're talking about. Reading through JIRAs and descriptions, I'm like, what are those numbers? What are those formulas? I do not understand. But I'm lucky to have full support from the team, because whenever I need an explanation, extra details, I have access to QC people. I have support from the dev team. They're always available to explain why the decision was made that and this way, right? And what sort of problems we do have as a team that preventing us from tackling a specific issue at this very moment, and why we gonna address it later. Because as you mentioned, there are a lot of plans that we have, and this is a live project. So, for example, I may be working on the current season while the team works on the stuff that is supposed to come in a year from now, right? So yeah, this is one of the essential parts of our job, to provide players with the detailed patch notes, roadmaps, explain what we're working on right now and what our future plans are. So check our known issues board, check Trello if you're interested in that stuff. And of course, we are also always in the process of collecting and processing new feedback and giving the team a lot of job for the future, making sure that they're occupied and have enough tasks to work on in the months to come.
Okay, so I have a question that I want to bring, but I think we need to wrap one thing up that's been kind of, we've been touching upon it a little bit. So a community developer, when people are looking in at a community developer, usually, especially in the case of The Division, the community developer is very visible in streams and online, all that stuff. But so I think some people kind of mistake a community developer for a community manager. And a community, it's a whole separate thing.
Yeah.
Not in this is better, this is worse, but it's just two different disciplines that kind of work together. So how would you kind of describe that difference in a few words, just to make clear what a comm dev is and what a community manager does?
I would say that in 2 words, super briefly, that community developer is like strategizing aspect of the job, and community manager is more operational.
Right.
Easy example. Whenever I come up with the go-to-market campaign or strategy for how we're gonna work with the community, brand wise, doesn't matter, like content plan, my community manager is gonna be the one helping me basically execute this whole thing.
Yep.
So, for example, I think that we need to start producing more engaging content. I want more memes. My community manager is going to be the one making them. I mean, it's probably a very basic level explanation, because there are a lot more aspects of the job, right? Even if we're talking about tests, be it closed tests or open tests, doesn't matter. I will be making these decisions together with the production and the dev team. What sort of changes we want to discuss, what sort of issues we want their opinions on. Do we need a survey? Do we need to bring them for the, round table or whatnot? How we going to present that info? What is the deadline? Is there any constraints on our side and whatnot? Who exactly we going to ask those questions to? But when it comes to CM is going to be the one helping setting up, Discord servers, writing down copy, explaining what the time zones we're going to operate at, all that operational stuff, basically.
Right.
Executing the plan.
Yes,
Yep.
yes, exactly. But also, I think for Division 2 specifically, we're working very closely, comm devs and CMs, and it's definitely not like a vertical relationship. We're on the same level. We're just doing different things, but we're aiming to achieve the same goal.
Yep. Yeah, in my experience, CMs at Ubisoft are pretty damn amazing.
They are.
Yeah. But one other word that's been coming up, if we have any loose words that we've mentioned, just feel free to we mentioned that we'd come back to this later on and never did.
Yeah, let us know in the comments.
Let us know in the comments. Where is this? Is the dangerous word strategy. So it's a very corporate word in a way.
Yeah.
But when we talk about, we're setting up a strategy for the way we communicate with the community, as you say, like content plans, etc. How would you define and explain a strategy? Because it sounds very kind of fluffy, but it's actually a very specific thing often.
It is. I would also, in a few words, I would say that this is our plan, community team plan, on how we are going to better support development, production, and other stakeholders such as brand. So for me to create a strategy, I need to understand what our goals are as a brand, as a product. And of course, I'm not going to be basing my strategy on whatever other departments provide me with entirely, but these are the core elements that I'm going to be looking at when thinking about what we can help you guys with, how we can amplify this message better. We have new content coming up, how we can make sure that it's easy to access, understandable to our players, that they have all the important info, that they have tutorials, guides, detailed patch notes, articles on the website, or basically everything that can help make their experience better. And for them to understand the game better and make sure that they are connected with us in a way. So basically, it's a, summary of various tactics that we're going to execute to make sure that this strategy works in real life. And I would say that a lot of cross-function partners are essential for us to make sure that the strategy is well-rounded and has everything that the community would need potentially. For example, some parts of it, like advocacy program, is a big part of it. For us, it's ETF or star players, right? What our goals working with VAP players, how we are planning to achieve these specific goals, or social media. What our content strategy, what our content plan looks like, what are the most important content pieces and assets that we need to be producing to make sure that we are tackling, all the points. But yeah, strategy is, while it's super important, it's probably the most boring part of the job because it involves a lot of PowerPoint decks.
There's a lot of PowerPoint decks.
Yes. So
I have to say, though, that community strategy plan, it's something that's presented at top level. I mean, it's not something you just go to your manager and they're like, here's what I want to do. It's something that goes basically all the way to the top, and just to make sure everybody's aligned on that communication as well. Because it is seen as something very, very important.
And it's something that, for us, for the division as a franchise, also coming up to another level, to a franchise level, because we're not operating as, 3 separate brands anymore. We are operating as a whole as a franchise, and we need to be aligned on all our plans, on all of our communication. So that creates another extra level of seriousness of this specific thing.
I think we're going to need to if we're just going to look at one specific activity and kind of look at how the process with all of this, from strategy to execution to feedback, would be the public test servers. For example, in the case of the division, we've had that for many years, where an upcoming update is put on these public test servers where PC players can download upcoming builds, try them out, give feedback, etc. How, if we put up a hypothetical PTS for title update X, how on the community side would this process look like?
So basically, what I'm going to be helping with, what my team is going to
from point A, the decision is made up until the final reports are delivered.
So the first steps are for us together with the team, production development, and decide whether or not we even need that sort of thing. Most of the time we do. I mean, us. we love PTS feedback. And sometimes the first phase is not going to be accessible for everyone. It's going to be strictly ETF stuff, where the few selected players are going to be presented with the first draft of how the next seasonal stuff or next big game mode going to look like. So this is going to be our first part of providing players with information, collecting their feedback, adjusting stuff. And after that, we will be giving the rest of the player base, mostly PC, as you mentioned. I mean, we used to have console PTSs back in the days, but to better explain why it's not happening anymore, I know that we have a proper article, but the easiest explanation that we usually do have enough feedback from the PC players only, and it's not very different from consoles. And setting up PTS or basically anything on consoles is a very complicated and lengthy process.
Yep.
And usually, we operate by seasonal basis, and the time that the team has to address the issues, to make the changes and apply them is very limited. So unfortunately, it's not possible for us to have the console. I don't know why I'm explaining this to you. It's probably mostly for the other players who are going to be listening, because it's one of the.
It's important.
Yeah,
I learned something. So.
So yeah, whenever we make a decision about a date, it's up to us, to community, to gather the information about the content that's going to be presented on this PTS, and basically provide players with the, content brief, content description, somewhat similar to patch notes. It's not patch notes per se, because it's not a finalized product. The asset, the specifications, the gear, things may change. But it's important for players to understand what they're working with, right?
Do you also have in those notes like what specific things you're looking for at feedback for, or just play it and tell us whatever you think?
No, it depends. Whenever there are very specific aspects of the feedback that we need to collect, of course, we're going to address it. Or if the PTS has multiple phases, we would ask players to concentrate on gear for the first phase, and on the game mode for the second, and on the changes made after the 2 previous phases for the third. So it depends, but most of the time we just set up the like feedback forums, Discord, whatever platform for discussion that we choose. We set up specific topics for players to discuss and deliver the information on. If we're talking about closed tests, then usually players are given a survey with the specific questions, or open-ended questions like the NPS survey that we had recently, or maybe they already have a few, options to choose from for us to understand better. Because of course, as the team, we have our own assumptions. We sometimes know that, that is something that players are going to be talking about. That is something that they're going to like. That can be problematic, but we need a bigger selection, of people to give us that info. And even PTS is not the last phase, right? Because since only the PC players and few thousand of players can take part in PTS, it's also important for us to understand what the rest of the community is going to think about it, because it's not a secret that usually it's the most engaged players who take part in BTS, right? Because they're interested in the brand, they want to connect with it more, they want to get information on the newest updates as soon as possible. But the rest of the community, it's important for us to listen to them as well. Even if they're not that into all these nitty-gritty details, they're still our players. We have a few million of them, right? So as I mentioned, we're not trying to play favorites, and a lot of decisions are not being made right away, right after the BTS. Sometimes we need to wait for the rest of the community to play the content upon release and provide us with their feedback.
Yeah, but you can use it as a primer.
Yeah. And also, once the PTS is over, of course, we're collecting the feedback on pretty much all over social media. This is where, as I mentioned, we're not really using listening tools, all right? We're going basically on the social media basis, where we're just, there are specific topics and we're searching what people think about this and that specific gear, or what sort of issues or bugs they found during the PTS. So this is where we collect everything manually. It can be automated, but it's much faster for us to go through everything like that. And then, we meet with the development team, we present them this feedback, and together with the team, make the decision what sort of issues are going to be raised, what sort of JIRAs are going to be created, who's going to be assigned those JIRAs to, right? And whenever this, back and forth communication comes back, the bridge, sometimes we have a lot of feedback a lot of important feedback that we want to bring back to the players. Like, okay, this is what we decided. These are the claims. This is your feedback. And we're going to address this and that. Or this specific issue won't be addressed just because it's impossible, or there are technical limitations, or that is not something that we want to be doing at the moment because the future changes gonna answer that question.
Yeah, it's supposed to be like that.
Yeah.
We don't agree. It's also a valid coming back.
True.
You have this feedback, but for the health of the game or whatever, we don't agree with you.
So that's pretty much the whole PTS process. As you can see, the community team is very heavily integrated and is one of the essential, stakeholders whenever it comes to organizing this whole thing.
I'm gonna take this a little darker, but we've talked a lot about feedback as well, like community feedback, and community feedback is great. And as you say, we have the listening tools. We're listening, we're monitoring, we're checking, etc. But being chronically online, as you say, there's also, we know what gaming communities can look like, and they're going to be a toxic element in any community.
Yeah, not all feedback is made the same.
No, it's not made. It's not in the same tone, so to speak. But how do you, as a community developer, together with your community managers, and of course you as a person, how do you kind of navigate the more toxic elements that come out?
Yeah, talking about the darker aspects of this job, that is definitely something that a person needs to have in mind if this is the career that they're planning to pursue, or if they want to, start their career as a community manager or a communication specialist, or basically any public-facing person, is that mental health must be your priority. Because, unfortunately, not everyone out there is going to be respectable and going to deliver the feedback in a way that is pleasant to read. Right. Let's be honest. And actually, I have a really good resource that I want to advertise. It's called Safe in Our World, Mental Health First Aid for Community Managers. It's a online workshop that is organized by Safe in Our World, and they're a mental health charity. And their mission is to foster positive mental health well-being and deliver support for gamers and the gaming industry specialists. And basically, they have a few free self-care tips for community specialists on their website. I don't know if we can advertise it, but if we can, let's put a link.
Absolutely, there will absolutely be.
It'll be in the description.
Yeah, it's free. It's accessible for pretty much everyone. You can enroll in this workshop. I did, and I found it very helpful because they provide you, they equip you with the basically methods that can help you combat that negativity and the toll that it takes on your mental health. And I would also say that I personally do not really have a solution on how to deal with that, because it's very personal. It depends on the person. Like, I would say that maybe I'm lucky in that regard, that I do not really take it close to heart. Like, I've been doing that for almost 7 years. I think I have a pretty thick skin, and I understand. Like, I'm making sure that I focus on the positive stuff more, because there are a lot of passionate individuals who provide a lot of, this inspiration that we talked about, right? And a lot of good vibes within the community. So personally, for me, it's important to not concentrate on the negativity only. Sometimes, unfortunately, it's impossible. And I think it's very important not only for the community specialists to have their mental health as the first priority in mind, but also for the companies and for the production teams to understand that whenever you're making a specific decision, you're going to have a real person on the front line interacting with the players, and they're going to be made a target. And if the players are not going to be happy with the decision that you're making, think about how you're planning to support this person. Because, while it's our job, it's also I don't think that we want to wish that on anyone, you know.
No.
Yeah, it's a question of how to approach that, how the message will get out, and then also how you support your community developers, community managers afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely. Because while it's important for us to take care of ourselves personally, it's also important for the companies and for our teams to make sure that we support it. And it's not like we are just thrown in, okay, now you fix this. They're being invisible, now you fix this. Right. And I also think that it's, while interacting with community can be fun and very nice, and you can make lifelong friends, and there is a lot of inspiration coming from the fans, it is also important to understand that there is such a thing that is called parasocial relationship, right? It's a one-sided relationship that a media user engages in with the media persona. And while I do not really want to apply that specific description to myself or to other people working with communities, that happens quite a lot. Sometimes without people both sides realizing that this is what is happening.
Until you're in it.
Yeah, and I think it's very important for any community specialist or any public figure to take preventive steps and make sure that you're well protected as an individual, as a real life person. And if you do not feel like you're safe enough to, I don't know, open your DMs on every platform, just don't do that, because that is not a requirement. And maybe it's a popular assumption, but then again, as I mentioned, we have the tools, to work with the feedback. We have our own eyes, so it's not really a prerequisite for us to interact with each person individually.
Right. And
I myself, I would say that this is one of the tools that I use quite often, or put my phone on the personal, mode, and interact with people within the community who I know that I can trust.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a very important lesson to learn for any ComDev or CM is when it's the weekend or it's evening, turn off your notifications.
Yeah, some work-life balance.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because the community never sleeps, which is fine. You shouldn't. Keep playing, keep talking, keep interacting. But it's kind of difficult when you're getting messages about work I've gotten messages at 11 p.m. on a Sunday. It's just reality of the situation, right? Send those messages. I'll check them on Monday, but not right now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very important for everyone in this equation to understand that we are just, regular people.
Yeah. And it's a job, right?
It's a job. Yeah. And it ends at 5 or 6 or whenever. And after that, it's my personal time with my family, with my friends, with the kids,
Yep.
So people need to respect that.
Yep.
Yeah. Now, one other question that we ask a lot here on this podcast is your kind of tips and tricks on how to get into the industry. Is there any sort of education that is required, or if somebody out there is listening and wants to get into being a community developer, what would be some first steps?
That's a very interesting question, and truth be told, I did some research because I do not have any specific education, right? I have master's in political science, which is, there are some aspects that can be applicable, but let's be honest, it's a very different discipline. And I personally had to rely a lot on my experience that I gained in other industries that are also very interconnected, and there are a lot of similarities and a lot of tools that I brought with myself and was able to use. But if you're not a career changer, but rather looking for what are you gonna do with your life, right? I would say that personally, I think that education is not very important. There are a lot of tools
for this role, kids.
For this role,
education is important. Stay in school. Just saying, for this particular role.
Let's not be elitist, okay? But I would say that regardless of the education level that you have, this is the job where you can learn pretty much everything on the spot, right? It's the most important quality of the community specialist is that we're always on the lookout for more info. We never stop educating ourselves. We never stop looking for different cases or how other companies in the industry operate. Like, you need to be hungry for that information. You need to be in pursuit of, like, what are the social media platform changes they implemented this week, or what is like changing on the global scale of streaming, because those are going to be essential parts of your job. But a specific education, I know that I actually have it in my notes here, that there are a few companies that require BA in related fields, English, marketing, business, journalism, and communication. While I think those disciplines can be very helpful, it's not mandatory for anyone to have that sort of education. With enough passion, with enough dedication, you will learn the trade on the go.
Right. Yeah. I think we've learned, I hope that people out there have learned a lot about what, because I feel like a community developer, again, compared to a community manager, kind of, the developer is more esoteric. It's more like, what does that actually mean? Like, what does developer in this case mean?
It's also kind of less known and less spread out in the industry.
Exactly. So I hope people out there gained a lot of understanding what it is people like Daria does here.
Yeah. I really hope so.
Thank you so much for coming, Daria. I'm just going to, I really like plugging our own stuff. I'm going to say thank you again. I like plugging our own stuff. I think as a good follow-up now that you've listened to this episode, it's actually going back to the very first episode of BMS, where we talk about data. And we talk about what data-informed, data-driven, all that stuff means. It's really interesting. David is great. And also, why not go back to a previous episode with Yannick, where he talks a little bit about the development team and how that put together and developed over time.
Yeah. Slowly but surely, if you listen to all the episodes, you can piece together the whole machine.
Exactly. Soon we will have covered all this. No, we have hundreds of episodes.
There are so many roles.
But thank you again, Daria. It's been great.
Thank you for having me.
And like, subscribe, click the bell, rate and review, all of that stuff on whatever platform you're on. You know what to do.
See ya.
Thank
See you.
Bye.